Welcome back, my dear student, once again before you. So, my dear student, I hope you all are well. Today I am again here with another lesson. In our daily conversation, we need to ask something and we need to give statement or information, or we need to reply someone's question. That's why we need to know assertive sentence and interrogative sentence. My today's lesson is assertive and interrogative sentence. First, we need to know what is assertive sentence. Do you know? Okay, no problem. An assertive sentence makes an statement about a person's, a thing, or an event. It may both positive or negative. So, dear student, we have already known what is assertive sentence, but I think you need to know how we can identify an assertive sentence from a passage. An assertive sentence may start with subject plus verb plus object or extension, and at the end we find a full stop. So, assertive sentence must start with subject, verb, but an interrogative sentence start with auxiliary verb. Auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb or main verb plus object or extension, and then at the end we find note of interrogation mark. So, assertive sentence may start with subject plus verb, but interrogative sentence must start with auxiliary verb, or sometimes it may start with WH word, just what, how, which, whose, where, when, this type of sentence. So, it's the basic thing that you must know. Assertive sentence starts with subject and verb, but interrogative sentence start with auxiliary verb plus subject. So, you know these basic things. Okay. So, we can start our another things. So, my dear student, do you know what is interrogative sentence? Okay. When we ask someone to somebody, we use interrogative sentence. An interrogative sentence makes a question asking for some information. The sentence starts with an auxiliary verb or sometimes with a WH word, and at the end we find an interrogation mark. Okay. So, let us start our today's topic, assertive sentence and interrogative sentence. So, dear student, actually our today's topic is transformation of sentence assertive to interrogative. How we can change an assertive sentence into interrogative sentence. An assertive sentence can be changed into interrogative sentence without changing the meaning. We can change it in two ways. Number one, replace method. We can change any words into another. Just look here, I mentioned here replace method. If you find everybody or everyone in a assertive sentence, you can write who plus does or did or any kind of verb, then not, instead of everybody or everyone. Or if you find in the interrogative sentence who plus does or did or verb plus not, you can change into assertive sentence by using everybody or everyone instead of this. And another way you can change, if you find nobody, no one, none in assertive sentence, you can use who to change assertive sentence into interrogative sentence. You can use who instead of nobody, no one, none. And the other system is rules method. If you don't find these types of words, everybody, everyone, or nobody, no one, none, you can we use another system or rules method. So first I would like to give you some example according to replace method. So first you must remember that if you find everybody, everyone, or nobody, no one, none, then you must use replace method. Okay. I would like to give you some example. Everyone hates a liar. So here you find everyone. You can when you change it into interrogative, you must use who. Then according to verb, the verb is present form, so we use does. We can use does and not. So instead of everyone, we use who plus does not. And then after do not, does not, did not, we use base form of verb, hate, not hates. After do, does, in the negative sentence or interrogative sentence, after do, does, did, we must use base form of verb, hate a liar. And you must use interrogation mark at the end of an interrogative sentence. So notice, just you find everyone and you write who does not. So another example, everybody loves an honest man. So here you find everybody and at the end you find not a full stop. So assertive sentence starts with subject and verb, but interrogative sentence may start with auxiliary verb or WH word. If you find everyone or everybody, you should use who. Then according to verb loves present form, so we can use does and not. Who does not? So after do not or does not or did not, we must use base form of verb and honest man. And at the end you must use note of interrogation mark. So it's very simple. I would like to give you another example. Everyone liked flower. Everyone liked flower. So here you find everyone, then you must use who. Then the verb is first form, it's first indefinite tense, so you must use did. But before I use does, as I find present form of verb. So here I find first form of verb, so I use did plus not. And you must use base form of verb after do not, does not or did not, like flower. And at the end you must use note of interrogation. So you find everyone and first form of verb, I use who and did not and base form of verb. So it's very easy, very simple if you understand. On the other hand, if you find nobody or no one or none instead of everybody or everyone, then you need to use only who. But before we use who plus does or do or did or we were plus not, but When you find nobody or no one, you use only who instead of nobody or none, and then you can write the other parts of sentence. Respects him, and then you must use interrogation mark. Here like this you can use who and then other parts of sentence. So it's very simple. If you this replacing method, we just use one words instead of other words. But in vice versa, when you find who only who in interrogative sentence, you can use nobody or no one at the beginning of assertive sentence. Just like this, one can deny its necessity. If you find no one, then you can use who, or if you find who, you can use no one, nobody, none. So it's the replace method. Okay, now we will discuss the rules method. So dear student, if you don't find everyone, everybody, or nobody, no one, none, you can use the rules method. For rules method, when you change any assertive sentence to interrogative sentence, first you need to follow this 4 rules. One is use auxiliary verb. So you know, an interrogative sentence must start with auxiliary verb or WH word. Rules method, generally we find in assertive sentence, sometimes we may find auxiliary verb. If you find auxiliary verb, then write an auxiliary verb first. If you don't find auxiliary verb, then you can find main verb with present form. When you find the verb is present form, you can use do or does. When you find the verb is first form, then you can use did. If you don't find auxiliary verb, so we can use an auxiliary verb directly from the assertive sentence. If you find an auxiliary verb, you can use auxiliary verb. But if you don't find auxiliary verb, then you can use do, does, or did according to the main verb of assertive sentence. And so it's only one thing, we use auxiliary verb. If you don't find auxiliary verb, we use do, does, or did according to the main verb. And then you can use not with the auxiliary verb if the sentence is affirmative. Otherwise, if the sentence is negative, we don't need to use not with the auxiliary verb. So here there is a note. Actually we use not before a noun, but we use not after the pronoun. If the subject is noun, we can use not before the noun. If we find the subject is pronoun, then we can use not after the pronoun. But if you write it in a contracted way, then you can use verb plus not, auxiliary verb plus not. Then it not necessary to use before or after the subject, noun or pronoun. So we always try to write in a contracted way. Just I mention you, and use a note of interrogation mark. So actually here 3 things. First use auxiliary verb, then use not if the sentence is affirmative, but if the sentence is negative, avoid not, and at the last you should use note of interrogation. If you follow these rules, you can change any assertive sentence to interrogative sentence. So dear student, I think it will be easier if I give you some example. Just look at the whiteboard. She is a good singer. So here we find an auxiliary verb. So we use first we need to write auxiliary verb, then the sentence is affirmative. So we can use not, but in a contracted way, isn't, then subject, then other part, a good singer, and at the end we must use note of interrogation. Very simple. First I write auxiliary verb, then the sentence is affirmative, so I use not in a contracted way, then subject and other. Another sentence, he is not a bad boy. He is not a bad boy. So here also we find auxiliary verb is, and the sentence is negative, so we need not use not after auxiliary verb. We just only use subject, he, and the other part, a bad boy. So simple, just doing 2 or 3 things, we can change any assertive to interrogative. First we use auxiliary verb, the sentence is affirmative, so we use not and the other part. And here I write auxiliary verb, the sentence is negative, so I don't use not with auxiliary verb, and I write subject and other part. You must use note of interrogation at the end of the sentence. So dear student, if you don't find auxiliary verb, then you should use do or does or did according to the verb. Just like this, here we find we don't find any auxiliary verb. So cooks is a main verb, so here the verb is present form, and we find s besides the subject is third person singular, so we use does, and the sentence is affirmative, so you must use not, doesn't, then you can use subject and base form of verb and other part of the sentence and note of interrogation mark. So 2 or 3 things. First, I use does, as the sentence has no auxiliary verb, it has a main verb, so according to main verb, the main verb is present form, so I use does, and the sentence is affirmative, so I use not, doesn't, and I write subject and other part. But you must remember that when you use do, does or did or not, and not in affirmative or negative sentence, you must use base form of verb, don't use s or ed. Okay, then next sentence you see, became, the verb is past form, so you must use did, and the sentence is affirmative, so not, and the subject of verb, the women, and become, not became. As interrogative or negative sentence, when we use do, does or did, we must use the base form of verb, become sympathetic, sympathetic to see him, and the note of interrogation mark. So very simple. If you find auxiliary verb, you should write auxiliary verb first, and after auxiliary verb you can write not if the sentence is affirmative, but if the sentence is negative, you should avoid not, and at the end you can write auxiliary verb. But when you don't find auxiliary verb, you can use do, does or did according to the main verb. If the main verb is present form, you can use do or does. Here the subject is third person singular. You know the rules of using do or does. If the subject is third person singular, we can use does, and otherwise we use do. And if the verb is first form, that means in the first indefinite tense we use did not when we make the sentence negative or interrogative. Dear student, in rules method, if you find never or nothing, anything or ever in assertive sentence or in interrogative sentence, you don't need to write not after auxiliary verb, or don't use make the sentence negative using not, but just you can write never instead of ever, or ever instead of never, or nothing instead of anything. Just if you find these words, you can use. So if I give you some example, you can understand it easily. Dear student, here you see I find here never. So first when we change any assertive to interrogative, first we need to write auxiliary verb, but here there is no auxiliary verb, the verb is past form, so I write did as it is past form. Think is the present form, thought is the past form of verb did, and the sentence is negative, so we need not write not. Besides, when we find never, we use ever, just here. So first did and then he, and ever, not and ever instead of never. So when we use did, we must use present base form of verb. Think of his own happiness, and at the end we must use note of interrogation mark. So first I write did as the verb is first form, then subject, then I use ever instead of never. So this is way, this way, and the next sentence you see, I use first auxiliary verb can, and the subject they. The sentence is negative, so I need not use not here. They do, and at the end I use anything instead of nothing. When we find nothing, we can use anything instead of nothing. So in this way, but sometimes you may find interrogative sentence and you are asked to change it as assertive sentence, then you should write first subject, then auxiliary verb, then when you find anything you can write nothing. Here you see, you can find this sentence, then you are asked to do to make it change into assertive, then you should write first subject, then here ever, so you should write never instead of ever, and as the sentence starts with did, you should write the first form of verb, here the base form of verb. So in this way we can change assertive to interrogative or interrogative to assertive. Dear student, that's for today, but I would like to give you some homework. This 10 sentence you will do. Try to change assertive to interrogative or interrogative to assertive, and show it your class teacher or show it your parents, if you have any elder brother or parents, those who make you correct this sentence. So that's for today. I always say you practice more and more. The more you practice, the more you will learn. Okay, bye bye.